47 convoys in motion, more than 100 armed men, a drone overhead, encrypted radios, and a single point marked in red on Cjng maps, the exact site where they were moving Mencho minutes after his fall. What happened that early morning in Veracruz was not a reaction. It was a rescue attempt designed like a military operation, assembled against the clock and executed with one fixed idea. If Mencho crossed the next door, they would never see him again in their lives because the capture was not the end, it was the starting gun. The news came out the way big things do, first as a whisper in closed chats, then like a shout everywhere. He fell, and when a leader like that falls, what breaks is not just a structure. Calm breaks, discipline breaks, fear breaks, and something worse appears: panic. Within minutes, or the Cjng stopped operating like a cartel and started operating like a rescue army. Commanders did not ask for permission, did not wait for confirmations, did not debate. They activated protocols that, according to sources within the intelligence apparatus, exist precisely for a nightmare like this: the capture of the top boss. There was a first order, short, dry, the kind that is not discussed. Move the package, lock down the state, intercept the transfer. The transfer, that word changes everything. Because in these kinds of blows, the most vulnerable moment is not the capture, it is what comes after. The route, the vehicle chain, the window between one point and another. The instant when he is not yet shielded inside a system from which he will never come out again. That is where the Cjng focused. And that is where Harfu, according to the version that began circulating that same night in the hottest security circles, decided to play his coldest card, announce nothing, give no routes, no schedules, no clues. Just move him fast, in silence, and with a perimeter that seemed exaggerated because he knew what was coming. Even so, the Cjng did not move blindly. They moved with information. In the first internal reports, there is talk of vehicles activating from several points at the same time. Not one, not two, entire blocks, as if someone had pressed a button and engines suddenly ignited in Jalisco, Michoacán, Guanajuato, and specific areas of Veracruz, where the Cjng has historical presence. The first trucks did not travel together. They were separated by kilometers, like people who know they are being watched. Pickups without plates, dark-tinted windows, 2 or 3 men per unit. They looked like nothing, and that is the trap. What is dangerous never looks dangerous until it comes together. The meeting points were set in places not chosen at random. Highway gas stations with good exits, dirt paths connecting 2 federal routes, town entrances without cameras, and zones where the terrain lets you disappear in seconds. And while that was happening on the ground, above, the other part activated. Drones. Not movie drones, commercial drones anyone can buy, but used the way they are used in war. Reconnaissance, night surveillance, searching for lights, searching for escorts, searching for convoys with official patterns. The night had one objective: find the convoy carrying Mencho. And when they found it, the message would end. The rescue would begin. At this point, there is something you need to understand so what comes next hits the way it should. The Cjng did not want a long shootout. A long shootout is a death sentence because every extra minute brings federal reinforcements. What they wanted was a fast, brutal, surgical strike in their own way. Intercept, break the ring, extract the target, and disappear before the state could close the board. That is why the convoys did not come only with rifles. They came with what stops a highway in seconds: tire spikes, mobile blockades, vehicles to block the road, and long guns to impose respect without needing to stay and fight for half an hour. And even with all that, something unnerved them more. The first real alert did not come from a gunshot. It came from a siren. On a secondary highway near a point where the official route was supposed to pass, a Cjng convoy heard what it did not want to hear. Patrols moving, lights in the distance, the sound that announces the state is already awake. That means only one thing: either they saw you or they smelled you. And when a rescue feels discovered, people make the mistake that exposes them. They accelerate. That is when the strange movements began, the ones later told like a movie. Pickups entering dirt paths, trucks circling aimlessly, men stepping out to watch the road as if waiting for a train, and radios repeating like a mantra: "It already passed, it already passed, it already passed." Because Mencho was not going to pass twice. If you want these kinds of stories to keep coming out, I'll say it directly: subscribe. Because this is not a summary. This is the full movie with the details others do not dare to tell. And what comes next is the part where Veracruz stopped being a state and became a warboard. The first confirmation that the rescue was serious came when a Cjng convoy stopped pretending and began blocking. We are not talking about an improvised checkpoint. We are talking about a line of vehicles positioned across a straight stretch of highway with the precision of someone who had rehearsed it. One in the center, 2 on the sides, another pickup behind with men ready to cover, and a lateral exit marked to retreat if things went wrong. At that point, it was no longer about searching, it was about hunting. And here is what makes this story a direct continuation of Mencho Fell: the feeling that the entire country flipped a coin in a matter of minutes. Because if the Cjng CJNG had managed to pull him out there, even for 1 hour. The message would have been global, the greatest mockery of the Mexican state in years, the kind of thing that is not forgiven. And Harfuch knew it. That is why, while the CJNG moved convoys on the ground, on the other side what does not appear in leaked videos began to move. Coordination, intelligence, false routes, and a classic maneuver to break a rescue, the decoy. They say that early morning there was more than one official convoy circulating, vehicles with similar appearance, similar routes, similar lights, similar timing. The idea is simple. If the enemy is looking for a needle, throw him 10 needles and let him get lost. But the CJNG did not just watch. The exact moment they detected a convoy that seemed like the real one, they released the order. Not with pretty words. With the order that on the street means it is now or never. Total closure. No one moves, no one hesitates. And that is where Mencho, in the middle of chaos, stops being a detainee and becomes a contested objective. Because if you are imagining him handcuffed, quiet, resigned, you are missing the part that makes this story learn. Mencho was not going to go calmly. According to the version that later leaked, he realized something from a minimal detail, the change of rhythm. When a convoy accelerates, when escorts change tone, when the one in front checks the rearview mirror more than usual, the person inside understands one thing. Something is moving outside, and he knew what it meant. If the CJNG was close, they would try to pull him out. And if they tried, there would be a moment, just one, when control would break enough for the detainee to stop being a body and become a man trying to survive again. The problem for the CJNG was that the correct convoy was never alone, because while they were positioning for the closure, something began breaking their plan from within. Too many lights, too many movements, too many active routes at the same time. It was not normal. It did not add up. It was as if the state had turned Veracruz into a board with pieces moving simultaneously, forcing them to guess. And guessing in an operation like that is dying. The drones began reporting contradictory images. One convoy with heavy escorts taking a detour north, another almost identical heading down a secondary road, a third entering an industrial zone, all with similar timing, all visibly protected, and all possible. Radios filled with overlapping voices. No one wanted to choose wrong because choosing wrong meant one thing: losing Mencho forever. At that point, CJNG commanders made the mistake you only make when the clock is crushing your chest, concentrating too much force in a single point. That was when the state tightened. Several kilometers away, without sirens, without lights, exits began to close, not with obvious blockades, but with patrol cars accidentally parked. Trucks stopped due to breakdowns, improvised checkpoints that looked routine until you were inside and there was no way back. The first CJNG convoy fell without firing a single shot. 4 trucks were trapped between 2 state roads when a trailer blocked them in front and behind. In less than 30 seconds, white lights illuminated the asphalt. Firm voices ordered weapons down, and the rescue lost 8 men without ever seeing the target. That set off all alarms. From there, the plan stopped being clean and became violent. On another route further south, a second group tried to break a blockade by force. They did not shoot first, but they threatened. Rifles out, engines roaring. Clear intention. The response was immediate, not a rain of bullets. A single precise shot to the engine of the first vehicle. The message was clear. This is not negotiated. The CJNG understood then something it did not want to accept. The transfer was not improvised. They were being expected. And while that was happening outside, inside the vehicle where Mencho was traveling, the tension could be cut with teeth. Escorts did not speak. They only listened. Earpieces on, short commands, quick glances, are the kind of silence that exists only when you know that if something goes wrong, there is no second chance. At one moment, the convoy slowed abruptly, not by order, but by necessity. Something blocked the road. That second was eternal. That is when Mencho, according to versions that circulated later, leaned forward, testing limits, searching for reaction, measuring how firm the control really was. It was not an escape. It was an impulse, the instinctive gesture of someone who knows chaos can open a crack. It did not open. The escorts reacted the way they are trained to react when the margin of error is zero. Physical pressure, total control, and an order that admits no reply. Stay still. Outside, the chaos kept growing. Another CJNG convoy, upon receiving news of the first detentions, changed the objective. They were no longer looking to intercept. They were looking to create distraction. Vehicles appeared speeding in opposite directions. Shots fired into the air in distant areas. False calls reporting non-existent blockades. The idea was simple: saturate. But the problem with saturating when facing coordination is that you only accelerate your own exhaustion. Minutes later, the sky stopped being flying neutral. The first helicopter appeared without prior warning. Not low, high enough to see, not to be reached, spotlights off. Only the sound. That sound that makes anyone below look up and understand the margin has closed. Then came the second, and the third. From above, the image was clear. Dispersed convoys, erratic movements, armed men without real cover, routes already compromised. It was not an army. It was a rescue running out of time. On the ground, federal forces advanced with surgical patience, not chasing, enclosing. Each street closed reduced options. Each checkpoint shortened the radius. Each passing minute turned the Cjng operation into an undeclared retreat. Some groups understood before others. Some turned off engines, abandoned vehicles, blended among civilians, threw weapons into drains, disappeared. Others froze, waiting for an order that never came, because the order everyone was waiting for, "We have him," never came. And when that order does not come, reality falls hard. By dawn, the rescue attempt was no longer an attempt. It was a fragmented failure scattered across Veracruz. Seized trucks, confiscated weapons, radios taken, drones on the ground, intercepted communications telling the whole story without witnesses. Mencho, meanwhile, was no longer there. He had crossed the point of no return. What the Cjng tried to avoid happened without epic gunfights, without viral images, without the scene they wanted. It happened the way real defeats happen, in silence, through exhaustion, calculation, cold superiority. And that is where this story becomes truly dangerous. Because when a cartel of this size fails at a rescue like this, it does not calm down. It learns. And the question now circulating in offices, barracks, and decision-making tables is not what happened that night, but what will they try next? What almost no one saw that morning was what happened after Mencho left the visible board. When a leader of that level stops being locatable, it is not just a signal that turns off. All internal alarms turn off. Inside the Cjng, or the silence after the failed rescue was not calm. It was shock. Radios went silent. Groups stopped reporting. Mid-level commanders received no clear answers. And when in an organization like that, no one gives orders, everyone starts acting on their own. That is the most dangerous thing. In the following hours, erratic movements were registered in several parts of the state. Trucks driving without direction. Armed men taking refuge in safe houses not prepared to receive them. Vehicle changes in public parking lots. Documents burned in haste. Phones destroyed. Radios buried. The Cjng was not planning. It was cleaning up. Because the failed rescue left something worse than Mencho's capture. It left traces. And traces in an operation of that size are sentences. Meanwhile, on the federal side, the operation did not deactivate. It expanded. The instruction was clear. No withdrawal, no mission accomplished. Now it was about exploiting the mistake. Every vehicle detected during the night was a thread, and every thread could lead to an entire network. That is how the second phase began. The one that does not appear in leaked videos or social media. The silent hunt. In neighborhoods where normally no one asked questions, unmarked trucks began arriving. No sirens, no lights. They arrived, knocked on a door, went in, came out with someone in handcuffs, and left. No scandal, no shots, no press. Several kilometers away at an improvised base, analysts reviewed hours and hours of footage from seized drones. Every flight, every turn, every frozen frame. On those screens, there were not just roads. There were faces, plates, signs, gestures. And there was something that caught experts' attention, the level of haste. Cjng movements were not those of a cold, calculating organization. They were those of someone who feels time running out. That only happens when the blow is deeper than it seems. Because here is an uncomfortable truth. The rescue did not fail only because of the state's response. It failed because not everyone inside the Cjng was aligned, and that is deadly. Hours later, internal versions of reproaches began circulating. Cross-accusations. Someone leaked routes. Someone arrived late. Someone moved too early. Someone backed out at the key moment. In criminal organizations, those kinds of suspicions are not resolved with meetings. They are resolved with purges. And when a structure enters a purge phase, it becomes unpredictable. And some commanders tried to regain control by sending a late order. Total retreat, low profile, zero confrontations. But that order arrived too late for several groups already marked. That same morning, on a secondary road, a truck was stopped in what appeared to be a routine check. It was not. The occupants did not shoot. They did not run. They knew any reaction would bury them deeper. Inside were weapons, radios, and a notebook with route annotations, enough to open another line of investigation. In another location, a supposed mechanic shop was raided after an anonymous tip. It was not a shop. It was a resupply point. Vests, ammunition, phones, all connected to the previous night. Each finding confirmed the same thing. The rescue attempt was massive, coordinated, and real. It was not an exaggeration. It was not an inflated story. It was an all-in bet. Lost. And while all that surfaced, Mencho was no longer the headline. There were no images, no new confirmations, no location, only one certainty. He was no longer within reach. That is what frustrates a cartel the most, because a captured leader is still a symbol. A leader removed from the operational map is a vacuum, and vacuums are filled with ambition, fear, and betrayal. In the following hours, hours, internal messages changed tone. No longer about rescue, about consequences, about reprisals, about proving the Cjng was still alive, even if its head was no longer free. That is where the story becomes dangerous for everyone. Because when an organization like that fails at its most important, it has two paths: hide or strike somewhere else. And the problem is, no one yet knows which they chose. Maybe the only clear thing is this: the night of the rescue attempt was not an ending. It was the exact moment the war changed shape. And what comes next is rarely announced. The truly unsettling thing began to show when no one claimed anything. No statements, no new banners, no videos boasting about the attempt. For an organization that usually turns every move into propaganda, that silence was unnatural. And in intelligence, prolonged silence always means realignment. The hours after the failed rescue became a parallel race. On one side, the state closing files, securing evidence, extracting information from every seized phone. On the other, the Cjng extinguishing internal fires, trying to prevent the blow from turning into fracture. Because what few say out loud is this: the rescue did not only seek to free Mencho, or it sought to prove he still commanded even detained. And when that does not happen, the message filtering downward is devastating. Among mid-level commanders, an uncomfortable question began circulating. If we could not get him out, who is in charge now? Those doubts quickly become small betrayals, individual decisions, people starting to think about saving themselves. And when that happens, the structure loses cohesion. In several areas of Jalisco and Michoacan, observers detected strange movements: not attacks, not deployments, meetings, trucks entering isolated ranches, people arriving separately, leaving separately, no one sleeping there, no one leaving a trace. That is not preparation to attack, that is preparation to decide. Meanwhile, federal analysts reconstructed the night like a giant puzzle, minute by minute, or route by route. Each detected convoy was cross-checked with calls, messages, drone images, plate readings. What looked like chaos began revealing a pattern. Someone coordinated everything from very high up, and that opens another dangerous line. If the rescue was ordered, then someone with enough weight is still operating. Someone who did not expose themselves. Someone who did not appear on the road. Someone who did not fall. That is what most unsettles those who understand that Mencho's fall does not necessarily mean the end of the Cjng. It can mean something worse: a violent transition. In parallel, versions began circulating about internal tensions during the rescue night. Groups that arrived late, others that did not arrive, some waiting for a signal that never came, others withdrawing early. On each of those decisions leaves resentments, and resentments in this world are paid dearly. There were even reports of heated arguments over internal radios, people questioning orders, people demanding to know who gave the green light, people remembering that a failed move like that exposes routes, contacts, names. Too many people were left exposed in a single night. That is not forgiven. And while that storm brewed inside, outside the state's message was silent but constant. No rush, there is control. There were no spectacular announcements, no immediate press conferences, no inflated numbers. They let the absence of news do its work. Let time confirm what the Cjng was beginning to understand. Mencho was out of operational reach. In the following days, several secondary figures disappeared from the radar. Not arrested, not dead, disappeared. People who used to move confidently stopped answering phones, changed zones, or simply erased themselves. That usually happens when someone knows the network is compromised. And that is where the domino effect appears. A failed operation does not end when the convoys withdraw. It ends when internal consequences begin, when every mistake becomes a pending account, when every decision is reviewed under a magnifying glass and someone has to carry the blame. At this point, the Cjng faces a dilemma that cannot be solved with weapons: demonstrate strength without a visible head, or retreat and reorganize without making noise. Both options have costs. Both involve risks. Both can trigger violence or implosion. And on the other side, those who designed the federal response know something that is not said publicly. The real blow was not preventing the rescue. The real blow was forcing them to show all their cards at once. Routes, convoys, logistics, coordination, contacts. Everything was exposed in a single night. That does not disappear. What comes next will not look like that early morning. It will not be a massive convoy or a frontal attempt. If something happens, it will be different, smaller, more calculated, or more brutal. Because when an organization of this size fails at its biggest move, it does not disappear. It redefines itself. And what no one knows yet is what version of the Cjng they are building from that failure. And that is where this story stops for now. Because the rescue attempt did not end with a final shootout, nor with an epic image, nor with a clean resolution. It ended in the most dangerous way possible, without public resolution, with a leader out of reach, an organization wounded from within, and a state that, this time, did not celebrate. It waited. The Cjng bet everything on a single night and lost more than its boss. It lost control, it lost cohesion, and it exposed how it moves when it enters panic. The message they wanted to send turned against them. They did not demonstrate strength. They demonstrated urgency. And in this world, urgency is synonymous with weakness. On the other side, silence was the response. No provocation, no grand statements, only facts. And sometimes that is what hurts the most. What happened in Veracruz was not an isolated episode. It was a breaking point, a before and after. A measured not in detainees or seized weapons, but in something deeper, the certainty that the board changed. From now on, every move will count. Every mistake will weigh double. Every decision will have consequences not yet visible, but already felt. Because when an organization of this size fails at its biggest play, the real danger is not in what it did. It is in what it may try next.